Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Welcome to our latest Exeter Living Presents. This one is in collaboration with Building Greater Exeter. My name is Craig Ingham from Media Clash, which runs the Exeter Living Awards and especially in today's context, the Exeter Property Awards. Thank you for joining in really good numbers today, which is excellent. You'll see our speakers we have on the right-hand side of this and below, some lovely pics. We hope we have an insightful and inspiring session with Building Greater Exeter. Quick framing for it. There you go. That's better. There we are, back in the room. Quick framing for today's discussion. It is this really. So Building Greater Exeter is a public-private initiative, employability and skills initiative, supporting the built environment to shape the future workforce by inspiring new candidates, supporting employers and promoting a culture that makes it a great place to work across Exeter, East Devon and Cambridge. We can all help shape the future workforce. That's the idea lurking behind this in that greater Exeter area. And BGE is providing experiences and opportunities for local people and companies. There's an opportunity and in some ways perhaps a necessity with many forward-thinking companies involved in making the built environment a dynamic career choice. There's a lot of ambition in the wider region, booming out from Exeter, and great need to get some brilliant people into the sector. We'll be speaking shortly with Dan Howson from Building Greater Exeter, as well as some special guests. Do send your questions and thoughts using the Q&A button below. Please do add your name and organisation's name if you'd like, or be anonymous if you prefer. And we've had some already. Please note that this special Exeter Living Presents is being recorded and will be on our YouTube channel this afternoon and also on the Exeter Property Awards channel as well. Talking of the Exeter Property Awards, quick update here. Nominations are now open for the awards. There's a gorgeous aerial shot of Exeter, lovely. The nominations are open now. Grand reveal of the finalists is on August 23rd. The finalists and sponsors reception, getting everyone together on the September 20th, but really getting everyone together at the Exeter Property Awards at Sandy Park on October 20th. And by the by, one of our speakers today will hope to be joined by the rising star from last time, Tom Jupp, so we'll be hearing about his career trajectory. There's also the Exeter Living Awards, which return in the spring at Exeter University, a full range of areas through the city, including several that are relevant to this conversation for property, business services, civic and sustainability. We showed just a little bit about the awards last time. They're joyous occasions celebrating the very best in Exeter, from the smallest of the indies to the largest local companies. And I have to say that Exeter Council have been strongly supportive from inception, the Exeter Living Awards, and one hopes, of course, there will be again for the awards coming back in the spring this time. Let's move on from that one and let's take a look at this. Listen to these points here in this special Building Greater Exeter video.
Tomorrow is under construction. The future of our spaces and places and planet is for the next generation to design, manage and construct. Because we must build a greener world, a better, brighter, sustainable tomorrow. So be the creators, the shapers and makers. Accept the challenge, crack the code, find the answers. Be architects of happiness, project managers of inspiration, engineers of opportunity.
Come and ask why, what if, why can't we?
Break new ground as we break new ground.
Earn good money and build a solid career.
Get into a job that creates more jobs.
Problem solve on an unimaginable scale.
This brighter future isn't going to make itself. It's for you to construct.
It's for you to construct, and I think that's one of the key challenges. It's the sector plays to a form of idealism. It absolutely plays a sense of durable environments. Anyone in the sector has got great responsibility for the built environment, which is what we're discussing today. Please let's bring forward Dan Howson of Building Greater Exeter, the organisation behind this initiative. Also Ben Fenton, Awcock Ward Partnership. Hayley Stokes from Exeter City Council. Ian Collinson, also from Exeter City Council, and we hope Tom Jupp from the Vistry Group, some tech problem perhaps preventing, but we'll discover in a moment. I'll just give a quick bio for each to give context. Dan is the project manager for Building Greater Exeter, a creative producer with career highlights, including business building, various projects seen by tens of thousands of people, creating employment opportunities within arts and culture, entertainment, sport, education and the built environment. Ian, Director of City Development for Exeter City Council, Chartered Town Planner, over 30 years experience, currently Director of City Development at the Council, responsible for all planning services across the city, as well as leading the very ambitious and highly impressive Liveable Exeter initiative to build 12,000 homes on brownfield land within Exeter. Ian's got a national profile and a deep knowledge of planning, from design, property, land assembly, infrastructure and investment. Welcome also Hayley. Hayley Stokes, Assistant Service Lead City Development at Exeter City Council, leads and manages a team of planners, the Council's enforcement officer and the planning support team. Hayley has worked in both public and private sector, nearly approaching 25 years experience working in local authorities, and has been a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute since 2004. Tom, who is not, yes, he is. Hello, Tom. Good to see you. And I can see your high vis, so you're very visible today. So very good. Straight off site, are you? Maybe. Tom, ex-Armed Services leader Tom joined Bovis Homes, which is part of the Vistry Group, as a trainee in September 2019. Now site manager, and we'll hear about Tom's career path shortly. By the way, Tom was also recognised as the rising star of the industry at those Exeter Property Awards last time. Also gained an NHBC Seal of Excellence and a regional winner for the Southwest. And then we also have Ben Fenton, a graduate engineer, Awcock Ward Partnership. Ben spent 6 months in the transport planning team, producing transport assessments, technical reports, GIS accessibility plans, traffic analyses, before being rotated, lovely word, to one of the detailed design teams, where it's been for over a year now. Team works mostly on designing parts of the large urban extension to Newquay, Nansledan, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. Right, so there we are. Welcome. We're going to start with you, Dan, if that's all right.
Of course.
You. Yeah, well, tell us in as much detail as you wish. Tell us about Building Greater Exeter, what it is, what it does, and why.
Okay, well, firstly, thanks for this opportunity, Greg. And thanks to everyone beaming in from wherever you are beaming in. And also thanks to this top level lineup that we've managed to pull together here and for taking the time. So going back to your questions, if I can remember it, thinking about your neat framing of Building Greater Exeter at the front end of this, we are a public and private sector initiative really focused on helping the built environment to shape the future workforce. And we focus on 4 key pillars. That's inspiring new candidates. We do that in a number of ways. Supporting employers. We do that in a number of ways. Social value, and something that's new for this year, which is creating a culture, promoting a culture that the built environment is a great place to work. And I think that what's really important to understand is that over the last 6 to 8 months, everyone involved in what was already a highly credible project, when you look at the partners involved and the work that has been done, has elevated their game exponentially, really, by coming together, running a whole load of stakeholder analysis, if you like, about what are we actually going to do with Building Greater Exeter that will create an impact, okay? And then how are we going to record that and report on it? How are we going to keep the thing financially viable moving forward? So there's been some very kind of grown-up conversations early doors in the year to make sure that we've got a lot of that in place. And then most recently, specifically after a recent steering group in and around April, we've really been able to concentrate on projects linked to those 4 pillars. And I could spend probably the rest of the day talking about projects linked to those pillars. And I don't want to take up too many people's time, but we have recently had a new steering group where we've been through a quarterly review, which anyone watching this can have access to if they would like to get in touch with me. And it details the achievements linked to a lot of points linked to those pillars that we have been able to put into action over the last quarter, and came away from a steering group meeting just yesterday with a renewed focus specifically on social value, specifically on marketing, as we continue to develop the overall plan. So, you know, from a personal perspective, it's been a roller coaster, but inspiring, working with a complete mix of public and private sector organisations, training providers, education, who really are working together to try and get ahead of the curve of trying to solve, or at least get to the bottom of the employability landscape, not just in Greater Exeter, but further afield, and see how we can help solve some of those problems linked to that.
Very good. I mean, we'll be discussing a number of different areas in this webinar, but one back to you is this. Give us some sense of what you're hoping to achieve with these initiatives. I mean, maybe, I don't know, what success might look like.
Well, again, you know, we bill ourselves as an employability and skills initiative, first and foremost. And what that means is we have access to tools that will be useful, not just for our partners, our employers, but also for schools. And we can also act as a conduit. So in the first instance, there is a big challenge around finding out where the skills gaps are, where the jobs are, and how Building Greater Exeter can help point people in the right direction, get news of the right training, get news of, you know, whether it be reskilling or upskilling within their businesses. We've been doing a lot of work with the university, college, Department of Work and Pensions to try and get an understanding of the employment landscape, if you like, for Greater Exeter. It's really forensic. But someone like the CITB, and it's going to take a little bit of time for us to really understand what that is. But someone like an organisation like the CITB has detail covering the Southwest more generally, and between now and 2027, for example, it's close to 40,000 new workers are going to be required, not just in skilled trades, but across the board. So there are huge opportunities coming down the track that we need to work really closely with our partners and schools to try and make sure we get the right, you know, career paths in place. Right now, there are some issues around helping employers get apprentices onto, or house builders, for example, get apprentices as part of their initiatives. So there's some real-time issues that we're dealing with, and then there's some nice challenges that look not just 5, 10, 15, but even further into the future. So there's that employability and skills piece, but the great sort of vehicle that Building Greater Exeter allows as well is for partners and businesses to network, talk amongst each other about things outside of employability and skills. So, you know, we have a very pragmatic approach about the use of Building Greater Exeter. Yes, we want to solve an employability and skills problem, but we also want to help each other out, because the more that we communicate and come up with ideas that we can then turn into reality that help us all out at the same time, more can be achieved. And I tell you, if all you need to do is look at our quarterly review that backs that up.
Yeah. Well, very good. I mean, you know, the dynamism of the initiative is absolutely sort of powering through from this screen. So thank you for that. And you know, of course, we all applaud the initiative. I want to start with the bigger picture of Exeter, bringing Ian at this point. One very key project, very ambitious project, as mentioned, is Liveable Exeter. Could you just for those who perhaps are less familiar with it, talk us through what it is and give some sense of timescales.
Thanks, Greg. Afternoon, everybody. Yeah, so Liveable Exeter, it's a name that, or title that keeps occurring for me every day. It's a big part of the job that I do with Exeter City Council. It's really our sort of frontline initiative to regenerate parts of Exeter that really need to change. It's what we call brownfield land, or land that's been developed previously but needs a new purpose. And what we're trying to do with all of that land is bring it forward to create new neighbourhoods and strengthen existing communities. Now, the main way we're going to do that is by bringing together new housing opportunities, but it's much more than just building homes. It's creating places that people want to live in. So exciting, vibrant, new neighbourhoods with all the services and all the things that you need for your daily lives, hopefully within walking and cycling distance. So it's one of those kind of sustainable sort of initiatives, really. Some of the stats that will be quite interesting for anybody looking to get involved in any of this. So we're looking to build about 12,000 homes in total in the city. At least half of those we want to build in the next sort of 15 years. So that means something like 650 more homes every year for the next 15 years. So that, if you think about that in construction terms, that's an awful lot of bricks and timber, roofs, concrete, all of that. And all of that needs skills in construction, in project management, in surveying and architecture. So that there's that huge opportunity within Exeter to be involved and deliver that. And I'm really excited about what Building Greater Exeter can do for that, because it is about bringing in the skills, people, to offer them careers. My youngest son, completely without my influence, got into construction. He's a carpenter. He qualified last year from an apprenticeship. He now works where I live in Bristol in construction, building various extensions to homes, actually. But he absolutely loves it. He found his place there, I think, to be fair. And I think that within Exeter, what I think we're offering there is that same kind of experience, but with the opportunity that there's going to be so much variety in building all these new places and homes. There's going to be so much activity. One of my sort of things I want to see lots of cranes in Exeter, because that shows that there is building going on. A lot of the building that's happening at the moment is on the edges of Exeter, which is fine. That's great. But we want to bring some of that into the city as well, because we believe that's more sustainable. So we'll be locating the homes where people want to work and want to sort of socialize and want to have their leisure time. So it's one of those kind of linchpins, really, of a growing and prosperous city.
Yeah, it's a very visible arbiter, isn't it, of success and growth and ambition. Let's come to Hayley at this point, talking from an Exeter City Council point of view. We've heard a little bit about Liveable Exeter, and that is the biggest scale, most significant of all the projects. But there are, of course, other initiatives. We can talk about what it means in practice for the sort of skills and responsibilities of the workforce of the future.
Thank you again for letting me come along today as well. I thought I'd just set the scene a little bit in terms of how the planning department works at Exeter City Council and how that supports this Liveable Exeter agenda. And I manage a team of planners, but our department itself is split into sort of two main functions that get involved in the Liveable Exeter agenda. One of them is sort of more strategic side of the team, where they set policies, look at the city spatially, and as part of the work that Ian's doing, they look at parts of the city where growth can occur and development can occur. And exactly as Ian was explaining, ideally we want that to be in the centre of the city. And they set a long-term vision for the city and set out policies that guide what other parts of the team do. So that's the development management team, and they deal with planning applications, which is what most people out there have heard of before. And that's an application for development. So we'll get an application for a big site, for a housing development, and a planning officer will look at lots of different elements of that, with key drivers being sustainable development and considering climate change, impacts of a development on flood risk. For Exeter specifically, we're seeking to protect the important parts of the city as it has such a rich heritage. So as a planning officer's role is very much they're tapping into lots of experts and the skills that they can bring in terms of forming part of a decision. So that includes transport as well. And I can talk a little bit more about that later on, but essentially we're split into two main functions, and planning officers work in all different parts of that. So hopefully that's helpful.
Well, certainly at the top level, you've given us a real sense of just the multidisciplinary nature, the integrated relation, and you with the council having to have that visionary piece, that further look out, and to try to anticipate and plan for the new built environment of Exeter to come. So that's very helpful indeed. Well, to keep it to three at this stage. Now we'll bring in Tom and Ben from perhaps a personal career point of view shortly. Is the skills pipeline strong enough for the ambitions that the city has at the moment? Who'd like to take that one?
We'd hope so, but it is difficult, and it's what I guess there's the Royal Town Planning Institute does work closely with schools and trying to promote planning on the future agenda. And I think that's really critical for planning overall, and for us trying to get skilled and interested people to the sector in the future. We need people who can think spatially, like maps, have good visual skills, design skills, are good at negotiation. So there's lots of different elements as part of that. I don't know whether anybody else, Ian wants to add.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple of things on that. I always think I'm a half glass full person, so there's a massive shortage at the moment for in skills. And vacancies are really high in terms of jobs. That's right across construction, in the sort of professional disciplines. So what that means, that's a problem for us, it's a problem for me, but it's a great opportunity for you guys, because there's loads of jobs to go into. I mean, just to give you one statistic, which I picked up yesterday, which shocked me. So in and around Exeter, the average age of a ground construction worker is 61. If you think about that, just think about that for a moment. That means that that's a huge issue. There's a huge shortage of people who we want to try and get into the industry, and there's so many different careers, construction in particular, but if you want to go into other areas as well, there's so many opportunities out there. There's never really been a better time at the moment for that.
Just jumping in, Greg, from where Building Greater Exeter is, without sounding like we're at the very start, because of the nature of the issues with, one of our pillars, inspiring new candidates, whether that's primary school or secondary school, and maybe some of our, apprentices and graduates might back this up, but there is a huge job to do to convey the message that it is a genuine bona fide career path. What we're talking about is a necessity. We'll go on, there's a need for this moving forward. It's not a luxury, but there's a huge job to be done, not least between us and schools and the sort of education side of things, but us and partners in helping them to communicate that message correctly, which some other industries are very good at doing. And we need to steal some of that and make sure that you know, young people are talking about careers in the built environment in the same way they would about some other sectors.
Time to get on the front foot, which is in part, of course, what this initiative is about. We've had a question from our good friend, anonymous attendee, who's asked this on a sort of a slightly more macro basis still. Is Exeter on a par with the rest of the country in terms of the skill shortage? Is it slightly ahead, slightly behind? What do you think, as far as you can tell? Let's take that one.
What I would say there is that for various reasons that there's a national skills shortage, particularly in construction, and that's partly, without being political, that's partly to do with Brexit. It's partly to do with like an aging workforce, I've just described there before with that statistic. So it's an issue nationally. I don't think Exeter is any particularly worse off in that regard. We probably benefit a little bit because we are a city. I think you'll probably find in some of the more rural districts, it's an even greater challenge, perhaps. Yeah. But I think it's just a national problem, really.
And maybe other areas don't have the advantage of Building Greater Exeter type initiatives. Let's come to Ben and to Tom. I'd like to hear about your personal stories, your career pathways, and obviously it's about yourself, but also thinking about those watching this either live or subsequently. So Ben, talk about yours, about Awcock Ward, how you got involved, what your, I don't know, career options were at that point, and the early stages of your relationship with Awcock Ward.
Well, my career pathway, I suppose, started at Waitrose. I did a lot of hours on the checkouts, saved up to do a year out, and came to university in Exeter in 2017, where I did an integrated master's. And, you know, we're talking about sort of not perhaps glamorizing, but making the built environment an attractive place to work. And I did my degree, my first year was in general engineering because I didn't actually know which kind of engineering I wanted to specialize in. I found the others too fiddly, so I ended up doing civils, and I later changed that to civil and environmental so that I could avoid doing a structural engineering module. That was one reason. Also, environmental was very important. And towards sort of halfway through my final year at the university, a lot of my friends were applying to big graduate schemes in London with the big companies, and nothing against that. It's just from various work experience placements I'd done before, I realised I didn't really want to work for a massive company, and I enjoy getting to know people. So I sort of fell into a job at Awcock Ward Partnership. I'd heard about them a little bit through a friend, applied for a job there and started in October 2021, I think. So I've been there nearly, well, a year and a half now. Yeah, it's a sort of mid-sized regional company. We mostly work in the southwest on our sort of more detailed schemes, but we have a sort of planning end of the office, which, as Hayley was speaking about with planning applications, we carry out some of the transport assessments and the flood risk assessments for sites all over the country now. We've done a few up in Northumberland and things like that. So that's been good experience. And I did 6 months in the transport team, as it said in my bio, which was more the sort of pre-application things. And since then, I've been working in a detailed design team where we mainly focus on sort of highways and drainage solutions for new build sites, one of which is Nansledan, which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and how is, and I'm not asking for state secrets, honest, how is the reality of what you do? How does that compare with what you had expected when you first joined?
Sure. Well, university kind of covers a very broad base of subjects for civil engineering and for engineering in general. And I think that's been an interesting thing for me is I work with young adults quite a lot in youth work that I do outside of work. And right. I hear some of them saying, oh, I want to become an engineer, I want to do this. But actually, just as with biology, you might be interested in human biology, plant biology, biomedical engineering, something like that. There's so many sectors of civil engineering and so many sectors of the built environment as well. So when I joined, I wasn't exactly sure what my day-to-day would look like, and I wasn't expecting for there to be such a significant importance in sort of written word and sort of effective communication, I suppose, getting a point across clearly, and through email, and also through the drawings and the reports that we produce, ensuring that someone who's picking up this project for the first time might be able to understand it. So that was definitely a little bit different. I thought there'd be perhaps more of an emphasis on technical skills, but there was a big emphasis on written word and communication skills, which worked okay for me. I felt like I was an all right communicator. I quite enjoyed the long writing things during university. But in terms of how it's compared, it's been a really welcoming environment, the company I'm working at. I've really enjoyed getting to know the different teams that I've been in. And also sort of, I mean, I feel like the sort of least decorated panelist here, but starting to get to know clients and external parties, talking to different city councils and parish councils and things like that has been really good. So yeah, not a little bit different, a little bit the same.
Yeah, good. We'll come back to specific project in a sec. Let's bring in Tom. Again, your career story. You were in the armed services, and that's, on the face of it, is quite the change. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was in the Royal Marines for 6 years. Left there in July 2019. I was going to go into, there's a few things I was interested in, but I was at the career fairs predominantly interested in the construction industry, because from my opinion and a lot of others, the skills that you learn within the military go hand in hand into construction industry, whether, you know, organisation, determination, high standards. They all work wonders, because if you carry them into this, you can be, it keeps you on top of your game. And obviously people love that side about it, because, if you're good at those things, then, you can run a very good site. It can be very efficient, organised, and, you have a way to motivate people. You understand things from a different perspective. And, at the end of the day, you want to do a really good job. That's just normally from everyone that I know in the Marines, it's what they want to do. They want to be the best. They want to do the best job they can. And obviously, joined Bovis at the time, because it was just Bovis at the time in 2019, as a trainee assistant site manager. Started completing all my training courses and my NVQ level 4. And then, just under 6 months later, I completed that fairly quickly, and I was promoted to an assistant, which is quite fast. And then upon that, obviously, I started to take on a lot more roles and responsibilities. Obviously, the importance of it as well, everyone's different, but being keen, wanting to take on more, learning that job well from your peers above you and those around you, and not being afraid to ask, because you may be the manager or you may be in a managerial position, but you might not understand what the carpenter's doing. You might not understand what the groundworker's doing, but, gaining all that knowledge enables you to then become a much better person. And then, I was an assistant for a year. And in that year, we won Pride in the Job and Seal of Excellence on the site. And then I was promoted shortly after that to run my own site in Wellington. And then, the 2 subsequent years, including just recently, which was announced a couple of weeks ago, the last 2 years, I've again won Pride in the Job myself as a site manager, which, is pretty amazing. But, I just feel if you put your mind to something and you really care about what you do, it can go a long way, because, I can't stress enough. I come to work every day and I love what I do, and I love this industry, and there's no greater thing than handing over the keys to someone's biggest investment. There isn't a bigger investment someone makes in life than a house.
That feeling must be very, very special. Just wanted to ask you this question for those who are less familiar. What exactly is a site manager? What are you responsible for?
So the site management for the site, effectively, you are responsible and in charge of that whole development, from the health and safety. So, whether that's you've got safe walkways, whether you've got the scaffold safe and and it's efficient, you've got the machinery that's operating is suitable for the job. Everyone on site, you've deemed that they're competent operators and they're trained in what they need to do. They're a skilled worker. Programming and planning, so you program all the works, you plan stuff with the contractors, and then also write programs to then send out to them, manage expectations. You've also got the NHBC, which is the National House Building Council, which is the people that sign off the houses and provide the warranty alongside us, and it's working alongside them to adhere to the standards that they set under the building regs, also adhere to our own company specifications and standards and drawings, vet those, make sure everything's built in accordance with drawings and everything's being coordinated and orchestrated well on site. You've then got like the contractors themselves, so like managing people and ensuring they've got the right kit materials, so calling stuff off with suppliers, getting stuff contractors to get the right stuff to site, managing the labor, so you're ringing the you're the face front for site, so you're managing the contracts you got on site. You speak to whether it's the contracts manager or the directors, whoever at that company, or the supervisors, to ensure that you've got the right labor, they're doing the right thing, address any issues, also address any problems, and yeah, it is a broad spectrum. There is a lot to do, and
anyone listening to this will have a sense of this is responsibility. It's integrated. It's in some cases it's reactive. It's primarily planning and anticipating, but it's also just that sense of sheer importance of this role, which relatively early in your career, those are the sort of career paths which can be taken, and I hope that of itself will be pretty inspiring to people watching this. So thank you. Let's bring Ben back and talk about Nansledan. So first of all, what it is this sort of, it's being referred to as almost Surfbury compared with Poundbury. But I guess when you first joined Awcock Ward, you probably you may not even have heard of it, but no idea you're going to be involved in it. Tell us about it.
Sure. So both Poundbury and Nansledan, almost call it Surfbury, there are projects sort of headed up by the Duchy of Cornwall. It's on land that they own. Poundbury started a lot longer ago than Nansledan did, and a lot of the lessons learned in Poundbury, which you might have seen if you've whizzed along the A35 at any point, a lot of the lessons learned on Poundbury are being taken forward into Nansledan. So it's an urban extension to Newquay. It's just sort of southeast of Newquay. And I say urban extension because as well as 4,000 houses, there's also shops, lots of green space, urban farm, a school, and yeah, kind of everything you'd expect from a town. We've done a site visit as a whole company before, but also when I was down in Cornwall a few weeks ago on holiday, I took my fiance because I was like, oh look, this is what we're building. So it's a really nice site with a lot of focus on sort of pedestrian friendliness and yeah, just good quality houses. And because it's the Duchy of Cornwall that are heading up the project, they've got a very long-term view of the project. So they're really building somewhere to last, and somewhere that will pay itself back over a long period rather than in the first couple of years kind of thing. And a bit like Tom was saying, it's been quite rewarding because as well as providing a place for people to live, it's also providing a nice place for people to live, people to visit, as well as the accommodation. There's obviously cafes, restaurants, and lots of nice green space and play parks and things like that. So yeah, it's been a rewarding project to be a part of.
We can feel that coming through the screen. Ian, you've got a point.
Ben, I've been to Nansledan and it is super exciting. It's dead easy to get to as well. Anybody that is going that way, it's literally off the main A30 and you're straight into Nansledan just before you go down into Newquay. But so there's all those funky shops there as well, which I think are amazing at the front. But what my question was, so they've made a big thing, the Duchy. So those that don't know as well, the Duchy is basically it's King Charles now. So they make a big thing about going local. So for example, I think there's a local slate quarry that they use for some of the roof materials, but also in terms of the construction workers. Is that still the case, that they're trying to source, local people to build, to get into the building trade there?
Yeah, I obviously can't speak for every person that's working on the site, but one thing that sort of I noticed when I went is often when you see parking spaces, they're white lining that's painted on the floor, whereas in Nansledan, the curbs and also the sort of things that delineate the parking spaces are these little granite sort of sets, these little granite cuboids, I suppose, that are inset into the ground, which is obviously more permanent than white lining, but also that it's been mined or quarried from just around the corner, because there's quite a few sites where they get these things from, and because it's such a large site as well, but because it's got this kind of overall vision, there is a lot of consistency throughout. So a lot of the street names are Cornish language, a lot of the shops sort of are either, I think, relocated or new shops run by locals and things like that. So for sure there's a lot of Cornish pride there, and a lot of local resources and materials that are being used for it.
When you mentioned the word pride, I think that came through from both of you, your sense of pride in what you're doing. And again, for anyone watching this, the idea that, I'll take one very specific, perhaps personal point you said, you took your fiance to see it. Well, that's because you are so excited about it, and in a way that you can't sort of take your partner or whatever to multiple work areas ordinarily, and nor would you wish to. But when it's as strong as that, then you absolutely
point out that they have already built part of Nansledan. It's not just a pure construction site. There are people living there at the moment. So
yeah, because that would be a bit weird. Take your fiance to a construction site, but anyway, whatever. Good for you for that. We've had a couple of questions. There's one from Samuel Kimball Wrigley of the Mace Group, and their Mace work through Cornwall, Devon, Somerset, South Gloss, and right there through Bournemouth and so on. It's really for you, Dan. Does your employabilities and skills initiative include building surveying, cost consultancy, and project management for the built environment?
Absolutely. One of our just going back to a point Ben made a minute ago, you are far more qualified in construction than I am. So don't knock yourself down there with your medals, my friend. Just change. Building Greater Exeter in November used the term, we're helping construction to shape the future workforce. We've changed the language from feedback from schools and others based on the fact that it was putting people off. When you do a lot of research and work into what we can actually do longer term, using the term built environment not just opens up the conversation linked to skilled trades and those jobs that you mentioned, but it's roles linked to legal, marketing, finance. These are all important roles that exist within built environment organisations that we need to be able to champion. I had two lads come up to us at the National Apprenticeship Show at Sandy Park early in the year. They wanted to be digital marketeers, and they asked where all the creative agency stands were. There weren't any there. But I said to them, take a look at our website, have a look at the brands, the businesses that are on there. Some of them are not just the biggest regionally, they're biggest nationally. They have huge marketing departments. And I tell you what, they struggle to communicate to you, your audience, that this world is a great career choice. Why don't you go and build a project and go to them? They hadn't even thought of that as a possibility. It was traditional thinking. So in answer to your question, yes, longer term, we want to be able to create, promote, talk about career pathways that aren't just into traditional skilled trades, which are really important, but there are so many others on offer. But also look into those weird and wonderful skills and ways of communicating to young people specifically, that there are opportunities if you are a designer, a gamer, in this world.
Good. We've had a question from Nick Howson. Is the team looking at similar initiatives elsewhere in the world, i.e. making sure that Exeter adopts and implements best practice and experience so that the wheel, such that it is not reinvented? Yes, no, maybe, will do.
Don't quite understand the question.
Oh, in other words, there will be very broadly similar initiatives elsewhere because the issue of skill shortage applies elsewhere. are you able, have you got the bandwidth to be looking elsewhere to see some best practice of other city areas?
My focus is Greater Exeter. And it really is, and that is a big job in itself. Obviously, being slightly interested in this, as you need to be, and working in it, you look to other areas for inspiration. I'll hand over to Ian in a minute, but it might not sound much when you look at the Greater Exeter area, but when you're in it, which we are, the job ahead is quite substantial.
Yeah, Ian.
So one of my previous jobs, I worked in Bristol City Council, and this is going back a few years now. They launched an initiative there which was very similar to BGE. It's grown and grown over the years, and it's probably one of those sort of areas that is really advanced now. And there's so much demand in Bristol. Bristol is a much bigger city, obviously, and it was a really important part of the sort of business planning for the council that they got into this space. So I'd look to, certainly from my experience, look to Bristol. I think Plymouth as well, similar sort of journey there. So we absolutely would want to share experiences and learning from those places. And maybe there's things that they can learn from us as well. Wouldn't necessarily say that they've got all the answers. I think we've got some great initiatives going on here as well that they could learn from.
It's absolutely inward and outward, and we had Ian was one of our speakers for Media Clash. We had a property symposium around this area of the city of the future. What does it look like? What's the planning needed now? And that was covering Bristol, Exeter, Cardiff and Bath. And again, it's the learning from and contributing to. Hayley, your thoughts?
I was just going to say, I used to work for Devon County Council, and obviously looking at the wider areas, there's lots of, there's an existing urban extension or current proposed existing urban extension Plymouth at Sherford, which is a essentially a new town on the edge of Plymouth, which applies the same principles as Poundbury. They also have a proposed urban extension at Woolwell, and we have Cranbrook in Exeter. So, and all these places are growing. So again, there will be the need again for the same skills to develop, including planning and the construction industry, for them to grow. And they are proposed and already long-term planned projects. So there's definitely lots of development in place in Devon as well as Exeter already proposed. So.
We've had a person called Marcus Di Vincenzo reaching out about EV charging. We'll make sure, Marcus, that you're put in touch with Dan and to continue that conversation. I want to come to a general point, and you've each touched on this in different ways, but this, at a time of high employment, not unemployment, employment, there's clearly competition for skills in multiple sectors. So why are careers in the built environment so appealing? Fresh points about that, including be able to show your fiancé the work you do.
Well, I could just quickly answer that. When you look at the built environment and you understand what that covers, there are opportunities for everyone almost. We ran a school workshop the other day, whereby we encouraged everyone to come to it with an idea of what they might want to do in the future, but the outcome was based on what that thing is linked into the built environment, almost to prove the case that almost it doesn't matter what you are wanting to do, we could find a role for you within the built environment. And I think what's interesting is that if you take a look at it like that, especially as a young person or a parent, and you realize the necessity of what we're talking about, it is a world, it is an industry that you should absolutely consider alongside other things as a potential career path. But then, of course, you've got the idea that side of the fence that really want to make an impact on the world moving forward, whether it be linked to sustainability or other. And the built environment clearly presents a way of you being able to do that and take your future wife and show it off.
Ben, we are going to stop the fiancé bit in a moment, don't worry.
that's okay. I'm very excited. Yeah, I might just add that when I was thinking about what I wanted to do one day, I like a while back, while I was figuring out whether engineering was what I wanted to go into, I sort of realised what a cultural impact as well that engineering can have. And whilst I spent a bit of time in America doing Camp America, and I found out when I was there that sort of 3 of the most famous bits of engineering, I suppose, in the States were built during the Great Depression. So the Empire State Building, the Hoover Dam, and the Golden Gate Bridge. And in order, like the Empire State Building is a huge cultural monument and provided a lot of employment for people at the time. The Hoover Dam obviously now provides clean water and electricity for a big area. And the Golden Gate Bridge sort of cut down a journey time from about, I think, an hour and a half to 10 minutes. And I suppose I just realized that when you work in the built environment, and you can create spaces, you can create places, you can connect people, and you know, I think a lot of us here are sort of working on house building and things like that, but you know, you're also creating a place for people to live, and that's quite a rewarding thing to be thinking about, really, is when you're like, recently I've been working on a little site in Dorset, and principles have changed a lot as regards to drainage systems on sites, and instead of cold hard concrete, we're sort of focusing on open water and suds and things like that, and just making places more livable and pleasant to spend time. So that's one reason I'd say that it's a pretty attractive place to work in the built environment.
And that sense of durability, responsibility, interpreting societal trends, contributing to society, it's all you know, the points you're making about those 3 major projects in the States, give or take, apply to any form of the built environment. And it's just heartening to hear that. I want to come on to a slightly broader point about the characteristics which of those in your broad sector. And that's because, as mentioned earlier, it's a very multidisciplinary area. It must be amongst the most multidisciplinary of any in which to work, from architects and engineers and planners and QS and builders, suppliers, designers, contractors, I mean, many more. So over and above a person's specific skill, their sort of vertical skill, what personal characteristics are required? Tom, I'll perhaps bring you in on this one. You've, you know, by the nature when you took out the site manager role, going across a number of different areas effectively.
Yeah, so the various different, you know, roles and attributes that you look at across the building industry is huge, isn't it? Because you get, you know, people from all different areas, all different trades, and then completely different walks of life. You know, that everyone's, you know, as the saying goes, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and you've got so many people that can bring, you know, so many different views and points into how to do something. That, you know, they may be a carpenter, but they've also got the understanding on what their trade can impact on the person after them. So they have to understand other trades and other, you know, like ultimately the impact of what their job also has on other people, and how they can also help other people, whilst also everyone, you know, coming together so that they can, you're all under one roof building the same product to get to the same end goal. And you know, it's having all those skills and having that knowledge in order to get to the place you want to be. So it isn't just having that tunnel vision and having, the narrow-minded mindset that I'm only here to do what I need to do and that's it. I'm not worried about anything else. There is so many other things to think about and learn and take on board. And you walk away knowing a lot more than what, you walked in there with.
Yeah, and of course, contributing a load as well. And within some of the points we've been making, of course, the ability to work as a team and with other teams is absolutely essential. And those are skills which individuals may not even know they've necessarily got, but if they have got them and can be developed, gosh, they've got such great careers to be had as you're spending your own career in its earliest stages. I want to come to, we are coming towards the end of this, and a few flurry of questions come in. Good old anonymous, maybe the same ones previous, who knows? What about roles promoting ensuring protection of the natural environment within the built environment industry? With such an immediate need to preserve and improve the environment, the need of our climate, is the built environment working hard enough to also work alongside and train those types of professionals to achieve this? Or, and it's a fairly loaded point, but a valid one, is the built environment construction industry too focused on profit over environmental protection? I'd steer away from that latter point. That feels like a different discussion, valid though it is. But in terms of helping develop the thinking and the thinkers for the environmental focused needs in the future, how well do you think the sector is doing to develop and attract those people? Questions going up. Perhaps I'll take Hayley first on this one.
I as a manager within my team of planning officers, we deal with applications day to day where there are lots of issues affecting the natural environment, and the government is clear that there are changing requirements in terms of we are now expecting something called biodiversity net gain to be implemented later this year, where for each development we will seek 10% biodiversity net gain. This means for each site you would be required to assess what the natural environment that's there now, i.e. what habitats or wildlife is on a site now, and then provide a 10% increase over that. So the government is aware of the impacts of construction industry and the impacts of developing greenfield sites in particular. But that's why our agenda now, and maybe Ian can add to that, is we are much more focused on brownfield sites, but again, whilst protecting the natural environment. We have, the Exeter City Council has an ecologist that advises us on developments when they come in, and so we can assess the impacts and try and protect the environment as best as we can, or mitigate and compensate against those impacts. So yeah.
And that potential duality between profit and environment, the reality is there are so many important initiatives that there is commercial value in being much more environmentally focused than previously. Let's take Tom at this one, and then I'll bring you in, Ian.
Just to reiterate a few of Hayley's points, but ultimately, us as companies, and I know we do as a company, think about so many different things now. Before you even start a site, they're thinking of the wildlife that's on site, how to protect the trees, like more public open spaces and stuff on sites, to avoid that mentality of what we used to have, concrete jungles where there's so many houses but not enough open spaces. So it's that, it's great for everyone living there. They feel like they do have a bit of open space to deal with, and it encourages wildlife, and then also it's got things, there's more encouragement now for the larger attenuation basins, and just preserving, replanting trees, like things like hedgehog highways, putting bird and bat boxes inside gables of houses. There's all these different ways that companies are now seeing that what they can do, even if it's something small or whether it's something big. There are so many different ways that they are trying to encourage more environmental the greener future, at the end of the day, trying to get to that end goal and minimize the impact on the environment. And there's never going to be no impact at all. We are ultimately building houses, and we are going into a field and creating a load of disturbance, but it's minimizing that risk. And ultimately I think that we are doing a much better.
And for those who wish to put idealism into action, you're making another good point about why you might consider a career in the sector. Ian.
Yeah, I was just just building on what Tom and Hayley have said there. I think over my career, I've seen sort of idea about focus on wildlife and that's been a bit of a nice to have. Now it's absolutely sort of intrinsic to what we do over that period. And the reason for that is that because I think we've all now learned that access to the natural environment, wildlife, is intrinsic to our mental health, physical health, and there's all kinds of benefits there. And so if you're a house builder, it makes business sense to do this because it's going to help you sell your homes. And for a local authority, we know that if one of our responsibilities is public health. So if we know we can improve people's health by ensuring that there are these environments, we're going to do that, aren't we? So we're really lucky in Exeter. We've got these incredible assets we call the Valley Parks, which run all the way through our communities. And it's about getting access to those assets and those resources, as well as creating new ones. So I'd say it's pretty fundamental to what we do now in the built environment.
We're right towards the end of our time, but I've still got a few more things to get in. Ben, I'll take your comments now.
Yeah, sure. I'll be quick. Just speaking as someone on the sort of design end of house building and the built environment, I think something I realised quite early on is we're trying to minimise how much we build actually, and when we're sort of designing a highway, for instance, we're trying to match the contours of the highway as much as we can to the lie of the land to reduce the amount of excavation and things like that. Same with drainage when we're putting sewers underneath the road or something like that. We want to obviously maintain safe clearance between the road surface and the top of the pipe, but if we can avoid putting it super deep, and if we can avoid putting unnecessary manholes, which obviously have a lot of embodied carbon, then we will. So yeah, it's a little bit not controversial but strange to say, but working as I do in design, I'm trying to design as little as possible, really.
And it also shows, again, for anyone watching, considering a career, that thoughtfulness, creativity, and applying it to societal needs, multiple different ways that can be iterated in the built environment. I've got three last things. One, I'd like to ask all of you at the very end of this, any closing thoughts you haven't touched on. Two, just to thank Nick Howson, who's popped through a link, which I'll pop around to the group subsequently, about other international comparisons and what other cities or areas are doing in a broadly similar place. But I want to come back to Dan and to ask you, this thing today is but one of a sort of integrated campaign this week. Would you like to just quickly update, and particularly anything to come that people here might be able to join in with in this week of events?
Absolutely, Greg, and yeah, thanks for bringing this up, because as much as Building Greater Exeter is trying to support inspiring candidates and employers in a number of ways, it is a really good vehicle to promote, talk about, try and build communities around what it is that we're doing. And much like you, Greg, you build communities and events that you need to sell tickets to draw people in. We need to do exactly the same in terms of the built environment. So what we are doing is under the umbrella of what we're calling the Building Greater Exeter Festival, is programming once a quarter, a week of events, meetings, open days. These will grow over time, things like this. That will do exactly that will draw attention to what it is that we're doing, hopefully promoting a better culture, a better idea that the built environment and all that comes with it, all the meaty information that we've had on this call and some can be researched and accessed in various ways and is inspiring at the end of the day. So the rest of this week, we have a partners event up at the university tomorrow. We have an event at the college on Friday, but the important one that I would say to anyone listening on this group is an open day on Saturday that will be at Make Tank in Exeter City Centre. And the idea there is that we're taking a lot of the work that we traditionally do behind closed doors in schools and universities, or in and amongst meetings with our partners, is open to the public. And it should be fun and engaging. Mum and dad should like it, as well as sons and daughters and everything in between. So, and this is something we want to grow. It's kind of a pilot this week. We're halfway through as soon as we press end on this call. And, really looking forward to seeing how this develops, because we're going to take this on tour around our geography, sit in Honiton, Newton Abbot and so forth.
Excellent. And just one thing on that open day, from when to when?
So 10 a.m. till 4 p.m.
Make it up. Close enough. 4 p.m. So there's a lot of opportunity to further these conversations you've been starting and been pushing today. Any closing thoughts from any of our panelists, particularly looking for additional thoughts? You've covered an awful lot of ground in each of your ways. You've been such strong advocates. Any closing thoughts? I'm going to boomerang it to you, Ben, to close off this session, and I'll then just wrap it at the end.
Me? Okay. Yeah, one closing thought for me, I suppose, is that there's a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds at our company. While we were talking about the different skills required for the built environment, we had someone who did an archaeology degree. We've had someone recently on a 6-week summer placement who's doing a geography degree. So there's a role for you somewhere, I'm sure, regardless of your background.
There's a role for you somewhere, whether it's apprenticeships, whether it's work placements, whether it's partnerships, whether it's in various mentoring schemes, whether it's graduates. There is a role somewhere, and if it starts from this webinar, if it starts more particularly from the Building Greater Exeter initiative, then happy days indeed. Thank you for all of you for your time and questions in this webinar with Building Greater Exeter, soon up on our YouTube channel. Please do explore the Building Greater Exeter Festival programme, particularly that open day coming up. Thank you for all our speakers today, to Ian, to Tom, to Hayley, to Dan and to Ben. Thank you very much indeed for your time and of course your contributions. Slightly more generally, thank you for your support for the Exeter Living Awards and Exeter Property Awards. Just on that, a couple of things. Nominations are open now. The awards are on October 20th at Sandy Park. We will, in the various activities of the Property Awards, we will be promoting, Dan, we haven't much spoken about this, but I'm going to say it anyway. We'll be very happy to promote the Building Greater Exeter initiative in different ways at those events as well. We're delighted to support it. I think we're done for now. We're well through our hour. We've had lots of good questions and comments, but this for now. This has been a Media Clash production, and this has been a very special Exeter Living Presents with Building Greater Exeter. Thank you. Exeter together, always. Thanks.